So the name of this series, a brand new series for February, it's called Wired for Greatness. And if any of you know me, it actually involves no actual wires, so no one's going to be harmed during the administration of this service, because I'm sure I would do the wrong one. Have you guys ever seen the movies, the guys are diffusing the bomb and they have to guess which wire to cut? Do you ever feel sometimes like it's like that working with people and they're maybe wired a little differently than you, and you're trying to figure out why are they driving me crazy? Like we're all trying to do the same thing here, but we're all so different. And this happens, it happens in church volunteer work. It happens at your jobs. Many of you, it happens in your marriage. Because you're wired differently. It happens definitely with our children. We expect them to, be our clones, but oftentimes they're a lot the opposite. And the title of this message is right here. Why are you like you are? So I want you to turn to somebody near you and just ask them, why are you like you are? Why are you like you are? No, really. So now I want you to say it. I want you to remember that time that they really did something that irritated you, and I want you to ask them, why are you like you are? Okay, so as I think, I've actually wrestled with this question of how to get people, because I've been a leader of teams for a long time. It seems like everywhere I've gone in life, be it in the church world, the business world, I end up being put in charge of somebody everywhere I go. I don't know why, even when I didn't want to and I try to stay quiet, it just kind of happens that way. But I struggled with how to make teams work, how to help people who don't naturally get along be able to get along for the sake of mission. I actually took a college class, and this college class, I actually got an A in this class because it was so very interesting. It was about DISC. It was about personality profiles and how we're so different. And I know many of you have probably taken a class on something along this line. So I've done DISC, I've done Strengths Finder, I've done, what's the one? It's like phlegmatic and sanguine. And that one was way too detailed for me. I just couldn't, because I couldn't remember what all the words meant, and then but then there was the INMP, and you guys have heard of these, right? Anyone ever taken a personality profile? So I'm going to get into a little bit later, but one thing that I discovered, and even though I could tell somebody's personality profile by knowing them and knowing that I have to deal with them a little bit different than my natural wiring because they are so different than me, and I have to make allowances and try to actually change the way I lead to be able to help people be able to get the mission done. And as I've gone through that, and it's been especially in the church world that I've learned to do this, because I believe the mission of the church it's so crucial. It's so crucial to the history of the world. If you look back, I don't think I'm overstating it when I say the church is the most powerful force in the history of the world. It's the most powerful force in the history of the world. If you look at most of the most powerful nations in the world were founded upon these principles that Jesus laid out for the church. You look at most of the major universities, the major hospitals, all these things in the world, the church is kind of where these things were born, where they came out. Our modern civilization, these ideas, this ingenuity, everything has come out of the church. Has been a very powerful force. And beyond that, how about the saving power of the gospel? Jesus put these 12 guys, 11 if you minus Judas, and he kind of minused himself, but 11 guys, Jesus poured his life into and entrusted them with a mission to change the world. And it's unarguable. Even if you didn't believe in God, that you could look around at the history of the world and realize that the church has actually changed the course of history. The church is the most powerful force in the history of the world. And as a matter of fact, the Apostle Paul, he says this, we're going to cover more than one section through this series of where the Apostle Paul refers to the church. And he gives this analogy and compares the church to a body. And he says that Jesus is the head of this body, but that we are its many parts. Just like a finger is different than a toe. They're both very important, right? But anybody who's walked on their hands for very long knows that they'd rather walk on their feet because the fingers can't take what the toes can take. They're designed differently. And I would love to say that, this all happened by accident, that we're all different. But as I study Scripture, I believe it all happened on purpose. That God actually had a very important purpose in designing us all differently. Ephesians 3:10, this is the Apostle Paul in that letter when he's describing, after he's done describing this church as a body, he says this, why don't we read it out loud? God's purpose in all this was to use the church to display his wisdom in its rich variety to all the unseen rulers and authorities in the heavenly places. That's pretty deep, guys. You guys know what he's talking about there? Maybe you do, maybe you don't. But actually, there is an unseen world. That within the world that we're in, there's actually a spiritual war that's going on. And the enemy many times the enemy all the time wants to take us out. And is manipulating and figuring out how to use the way that we're wired differently to divide us. And if you don't believe that the enemy wants to divide us, walk outside of our church and just drive around. And in 15 minutes, how many different churches can you go to? And I wonder, the church was made to be one. We were all made to be one. God sees us all as one, but we seem divided on so many things. Sometimes it's a very little thing that makes us divide. Sometimes it's a big thing that makes us divide. But God had a purpose when he created this thing called the church, and it was actually so that heaven and earth and even the gates of hell would know that God sent us, that God lives in us, that God has made us one. So it leads me to this question, and maybe you've asked it before, but if God wanted us to be one, why are we so different? Wouldn't it be easier if we were all alike? Maybe I'll change it. Wouldn't it be better if we were all alike? Oh wait, I can fix it. Wouldn't it be better if you were all like me? Oh wait, that's next week's message. I'm actually not going to try to change into me next week, but celebrating who God has created you to be. So, as I'm jumping into this message of why are you like you are, I've been doing a lot of driving lately, right? Yeah, you guys know, I have Sirius XM radio in my Jeep, and I'm happy to be able to hear a lot of new songs, but there's one that's been playing for the last few months. It's called Weary Traveler. And I felt like it's my theme song because I felt like a weary traveler. But when I'm not listening to music, everyone, my family knows anyway, I love music, but when I'm driving, I often like to listen to talking. So I listen to podcasts a lot. And one of the people that, one of my favorite bloggers and podcasters is a guy named Carey Nieuwhof. And last month in December, he said he put out his top 5 talks of the year. And there was one that was on there that I had missed during the year. It actually occurred last January. And I knew of this guy. His name is Patrick Linsoni, because I'd gone to a leadership conference and he was speaking, and I really liked the guy because he wrote this book called Death by Meeting. Anyone ever experienced death by meeting? You know, a meeting that was long and boring and grueling, and it's hard to get through. And I had experienced this both in the regular business world and sometimes in the church world, where, like, you know, I was meeting with people in the church world, and really what I want to talk about is how are we going to, like, save the world, not how are we going to create a policy on how to make somebody not do something, or how that wasn't the way my mind works. I was like, big picture. Let's talk about, you know, how to reach the people who aren't here, how to get to those people who are far away from God. And but what really got me is that he wrote another book at the time that I went for the talk. It was called The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. And I went through Patrick Lansoni's talks, and I read some of his books, and I really liked him. So when I saw Patrick Lansoni on this interview with Carey Nieuwhof, he's talking about this thing called the working genius. And basically the working genius, he uses a different word, but when I heard him talking, it was really about how we're wired. And here's why it was so intriguing. I've read multiple books about personality profiles, strengths finders, how to get the best out of people, and always failed to be able to connect the dots to make it actually work. Anybody ever been led by somebody who struggled to make it work? And if you've ever served under me, I'm one of them. I've struggled to make it work, but when he was talking, there's this light bulb went off. Because though we all have these different personalities, do you know there's a certain way that work gets done? And the way that you see work to be getting done and the way that I see work to be getting done may even though we might have the exact same personality profile, the way we get work done may be completely different. So how do you do this productivity thing? And I think about this mission, why is this so important to talk about? Because God's given us the greatest mission in the history of the world. And he wants us to be able to work together, and he wants us to be able to become one, but he also wants us to have joy in serving him. And when I listened to this podcast, and since then I've gone through most of the podcasts that has done a couple dozen of podcasts since then on this thing called the working genius, and I've gotten pretty astute at it, and I was just like, I got to get this out to our people. I got to talk to our people about why you don't want to volunteer because this person drives you nuts. That maybe this might be a light bulb moment for you to understand, and more importantly, maybe somebody in your family is driving you nuts. Maybe there might be, I know this is February, and from the statistics that I've read, it goes back many, many years, that February is the number one month for filing for divorce. And maybe there might be something that a marriage that is struggling could find in figuring out this working genius on how to give encouragement and filling to those who you are in relationship with, to realize that to celebrate those differences, to actually take those differences and realize that those differences are, God put you together because you're stronger together than you are alone. But these geniuses, I'm going to go through really quick right here on the board. This is a graphic from Patrick Lansoni's website. They are called The Table Group, is the company that he founded. But W is for wonder. I is for invention, D is for discernment, G is for galvanizing, E is for enablement, and T is for tenacity. And I know I'm going to get you up to speed on these words. And I'll talk as quick as I can. A drink helps with that. And I'll talk as quick as I can to get you up to speed on these, because I know some of these words make sense. We've heard them before, and some of them are like, what? Scratch my head. So anytime you're wondering, you can always just look at somebody and say, Pastor John's going somewhere. Just say it to somebody. He's going somewhere. This is really important. Trust me. So first thing I want to talk about is wonder. What in the world is wonder? Wonder is actually a crazy thing. It's a gift that people have this gift, and other people don't always recognize it as a gift. Many of you may have this gift from God in this area of wonder, and you don't even realize that it's a gift from God. But wonder is the natural gift of pondering the possibility of greater potential and opportunity in a given situation. You just naturally, everything you see, if you see a way to make it better. Which also means that maybe you see a reason that it ain't right. Right? So this gift of wonder, and sometimes maybe people might think that you're a person that has your head in the clouds all the time because you like to spend time alone, and you like to think, and you like to ponder, and you like to think of the why behind the what's. And many of you have this gift, and you've felt like, maybe why are you like you are? Maybe you've directed that at yourself because you have this gift of wonder. But what people with the genius of wonder tend to say, I don't think this is the way it should be. Couldn't this be better? Why do we settle for things to be like this? Maybe we should think about this a little more. And if that doesn't resonate with you, maybe you know somebody that you're like, that person just drives me nuts. What others think and say about people with the W genius. She's always asking why and why not. He's never quite happy with the way things are. Oh, why do you have to? Always. She's a deeper thinker than you know. Uh-oh. He's dreaming again. Anybody know anybody like that? You're looking at one of them. W, though, is a very powerful gift. The wonder, W, is often the very inspiration for starting a new project, program, initiative, or even a company. If you're one of those people and you see 1,000 business ideas within every conversation and interaction, and they just pop up, chances are you have this gift of wonder. Wonder doesn't always do something with the wonder. That's a later gift. And maybe you have one without the other. And maybe sometimes, I'll get to that later. The second one is invention. So when you think of the word genius, you're probably thinking of somebody like Thomas Edison, right? Thomas Edison, genius, inventor. So this is the classical invention, is the classical of what somebody would think of when they think of the word genius. It says, they write it like this: the natural gift of creating original and novel ideas and solutions. So this would be somebody who they're always creating something new, always wanting to change stuff, always tinkering with stuff, always, whether it be a process, a product, a way to do things. They have the genius of invention. And people with the genius of invention tend to think and say, hey, I got an idea. What about this? Here's something that might work for you. Please, let me try to come up with a solution for that. And this is, but on the other side of the I genius, what others think and say about people with the I genius is, he's a genius. Where does she come up with these ideas? He always has a new idea or solution, even if we don't ask for one. If you know somebody with the I genius, they can't help themselves. They'll never leave it alone. It'll never be good enough, and they'll always tweak, change, make different. It's just part of, probably the theme for this one would be make it better. They're always going to make it better no matter what it is. She's so creative, she'll think of something new. Without the I genius, organizations and teams suffer from a lack of novel thinking and innovation. I've often heard the church referred to as an organization. Without somebody around who has the I genius, a church will keep doing the same thing, the same way, year after year after year after year, and all around this country. I remember when I went to Florence, Ohio, one of the reasons that I took that position was that I had read a statistic that 6,000 churches a year were closing their doors and never opening them again. 6,000 churches in America, not around the world, in America, every year were closing their doors. These are churches that have been around 100, 200 years. They close their doors and they never open again. I was looking at a house. Man, the days are running together. I think it was Friday. I was looking at a house on Friday, and there was across the street from the house I was looking at was a house that someone lived in. And you could tell by the bell on top that this house used to be a church. Right there in Howell. It was a church that was probably built 150 years ago. Closed its doors for the final time, and sure, someone's living there, but I believe it was built with the intention of the people who built that church. They had intended that in 2021 that it would still be a church, that it would still be a place where the gospel goes forth, that it's still sending out missionaries all over the world. That was their dream, not that it would become somebody's house. But I went to that church and I said, I can't do nothing about 6,000 churches a year. But God, you could use me to do something about one. And so that church is healthier. It's modernized. It changed. It went from 1960-something to 2000 and maybe 2003. I think I didn't complete the job. But we'll get into that a little more as we get through this whole thing, why maybe I wasn't able to finish that. But without the I genius, organizations, they get stuck. They don't invent anything new. They never modernize. They stay the same. And so we need that I genius. And discernment. So who's ever heard of this word discernment? So this is one of, I actually hate that they use the word discernment, because when I think of the word discernment, I think of, anyone ever heard of the spiritual gift of discernment? This is actually one of the spiritual gifts. Like, you read through the spiritual gifts, and a lot of people, no one wants to step up and say, I got the gift of miracles. No, but you hear people say, I think I have the gift of discernment. And the reason I hate that they use that word is because it's not really the way the Bible uses this gift of discernment, the way they use the word discernment. They talk about the word discernment, and if I were to compare it to a spiritual gift, the way they describe it in their system, I would almost say it's the gift of prophecy more than the gift of discernment, because discernment means not that you're able to discern, but that you have this gut feel. And you kind of know what to do even when you don't have all the information, even when you don't know what's going on. They say it like this. The genius of discernment is the natural gift of intuitively and instinctively evaluating ideas and situations. Are you one of those people who, when somebody tells you about something, you just get this gut feel like, I think that would work better if you did it this way instead of that way? Maybe you shouldn't say it like that. Like, you could say the same thing, but say it like this without hurting anybody's feelings. You just got this natural gift of discernment. The way it looks from the person who has this gift is what people with the gift of discernment tend to think and say. Now, that's a great idea. tell me more about your proposal. I think you're onto something. I feel like you need to think this one through a little more. Anyone ever said that to our kids? When they want to grow up and play video games for a living? Oh, wait. I think I know how to make that idea work. And what others think and say about the people with the D genius, ask her. She always seems to have the best advice. He has uncanny intuition. I trust his gut. She'll know what's good or bad about your idea. He has great judgment and taste when it comes to almost anything. And I kind of like the snarky side of D, because this is one of those ones that can go wrong when you have the gift of discernment. And you could be known as a know-it-all. No matter what it is, you know what to do because you're a know-it-all. And you know what the problem with is? I seen this coffee mug one time. It said, "Those of you who think you know everything are irritating to those of us who do." And this gift of discernment can get out of the bomb, the wrong wire, cause an explosion. If you've taken this gift too far and become a know-it-all, help us all out and just do the love. But people who have the D are good at quickly evaluating an idea, proposal or suggestion, whether they came up with it or not, even without data. And D's can so there's some tension between people with the I gift, the invention gift, and the D gift, discernment gift, because the person who's inventing feels like they're always being criticized. Like every idea that I come up with, you're telling me that's a bad idea, but you're not telling me a better idea. And as someone with the invention, I love doing brainstorm sessions, and I love when somebody comes to me and they've got an idea on how to improve something, but I hate when they come and I don't like what you're doing, but they don't have a better solution. I'm like, I'll trade my good idea for a better idea, but I can't trade it for nothing. At least we're doing we got to move something, we got to invent. Sometimes it doesn't even need to be invented. Sometimes where we're at is okay. The next type of genius is galvanizing, and that's weird. When I think of galvanizing, I think of steel, right? I don't think of anything to do with how work gets done. Remember, what we're talking about, how work gets done. And actually, you need each one of these wheels for everything that you ever did that was a project that moved forward. You went through each of these processes, some good, some bad, but if you ever started a company, learned a new job, whatever it is that you did with work getting done, galvanizing. The genius of galvanizing is the natural gift of rallying, inspiring, and organizing others to take action. And if you're good at getting people to enthusiastically do something that they didn't want to do, you've probably got some galvanizing in your wiring. What people with the genius of galvanizing tend to think and say, come on everyone, this is a huge opportunity. Let's figure out how to get this going. I need you to join my team. Does everyone here understand why we need to do this? I want to say that right now. Does everyone here understand why we need to do this? You know God's going to use this church to reach this community. You know this church is going to reach more people than ever before. You know how he's going to do it? He's going to use you. But only if we learn how to work together. But only if we learn to become one. What others think and say about people with the G, genius. He's got so much energy and passion for what we're doing. She can't hide her excitement. Be careful. It's hard to resist his call to action, which actually means don't answer the phone. They're going to talk me into doing something I don't want to do. You can always count on her to get us going. People with the G naturally rally others to get involved through inspiration, enthusiasm, and an initial call to action. And if you don't have anyone on your team with any galvanizing, the ability to get others to get on board, chances are you've got a small team and you're not able to accomplish as much as you could if you had somebody who was able to do that. The next one is enablement. That was a weird word too. When I think of enablement, I think of like someone has a drug problem and like you buy all their groceries so that they can spend all of their money on drugs. That's what we think of when we think of enablement's not that. Actually, if you look up the real definition of enablement, enablement is a wonderful grand gift. Hopefully you know somebody with enablement. Enablement is, I'll just read theirs. It says, the natural gift of providing encouragement and assistance for an idea or a project. Don't you love people with that gift? They're like, hey, I got this idea, and they're like, let me help you do that. That's a great idea. As a matter of fact, people with the genius of enablement tend to think and say, I've heard enough, I'm in. This is exciting, sign me up. Let me know how I can help. I want to help make this successful. And it might not be that they even believe in what you're doing, but they just believe in you. Don't you love people around you who believe in you? I like having those people in my life. I need those people in my life. I thank God for every single one of them who He's put in my life. What others think and say about people with the E-genius. She's the best team player we have. I don't know what we'd do if he weren't part of this. Make sure she understands what she's getting into. Make sure she understands what she's getting into. You know what that means, right? Because sometimes they'll say yes to something, not realizing, because they believe in the person, but they didn't realize that this is a 40-hour-a-week job you just volunteered for. And he'll come on board once we explain it to him. E understands that nothing happens if people don't step up to make something happen. And just as important, they don't insist on doing things on their own terms. Now, this is one where Pastor John has to recognize his own weaknesses. And E would be one of my weaknesses. And when I was going through this, it actually bothered me because it's almost unchristian to not have this gift of E. But that last part, insist on doing things on their own terms. I can't do it. I absolutely just do not have the ability. I have zero E to because of wonder and invention are my two working geniuses. I have the inability to keep doing something in a way that I see as wrong, unproductive. We could do it better. I call myself an incessant tweaker. Make it a little better. Make it a little better. Make it a little better. And if you do that by degrees, you'll actually find that over time, a little better here and a little better there becomes a lot better. But people with E genius, they're wonderful, but they want to, I drive people with this gift crazy because I'm always changing things. I remember one time I wanted to build a fake wall for a stage, and I had a bunch of carpenters show up, and they have this E genius, and they show up and they're like, "Where's the blueprint?" And I'm, what? No, I'm going to invent this as we go. No, we got the wood, we got the tools, and I'm thinking about how I want to do it, and about 30 minutes later, these guys have this whole wall. It's all up, and I'm like, wait a minute, you guys didn't put any boxes for where the cords are going to go. I didn't think about that part. And so we ended up having to cut holes in this wall because I was trying to figure it out as we went along. But these guys they wanted to know the plan. So the person with the E, that just tell me what needs to be done. And I'm more than happy to do it. But People like me drive them crazy. Tenacity. Tenacity is my favorite. Tenacity might, so I'm just going to read their genius of tenacity. It's the natural gift of pushing projects or tasks to completion. And what people with the genius of tenacity tend to think and say is, come on everyone, we need to raise our standards here. Has anyone ever had a boss with the gift of tenacity? Did it ever feel like it wasn't such a gift? I'm concerned that we're not going to hit our deadline. I think we need to stay later and work harder. If we miss our goal, I'm going to be really disappointed. And this gift of tenacity is actually so important to the rest of us because without you, we might not get anything done ever. Sometimes in church world, this becomes a very difficult gift to manage. Because if we have someone with the gift of tenacity, they want a project to have a start, a process, and an end. And much of what we do in church world has this like infinity loop. And like we're going to start a youth ministry. When are we going to end that? When Jesus comes back? How about then? Or we're going to start name the ministry. And when are we hoping that ends? Most of the time, it's got an infinite thing. So people with this genius of tenacity, in order to tap into it and really get the most out of it, we've actually got to figure out we're going to do this part of this ministry so that it has a start and it has an end, or else we're going to drive them crazy and we're going to drain them and they'll drain us in the process. But what others think and say about people with the T genius is, I don't think he's ever missed his number. She doesn't want to hear any excuses. Don't get in his way. He's going to do whatever it takes to get it done. Failure isn't a word in her vocabulary. And I hope that you know people with this tenacity. I actually like having people with tenacity in my life. And the reason I like to have people with tenacity in my life is I don't naturally have it. I have to invent it. I will sit and I often in the front pew and I'll bring a pen and I'll bring a paper and I'll pray and I'll talk, or maybe I have my phone and I'm making notes in my phone and I'm like, all right, God, what do I need to do today? And I get this list and I do it and I get things done, but it doesn't bring me joy. So I have to sit in the presence of God, which does bring me joy, in order to be able to make the list, to get things done. But there are some of you here, like you live for the list. Like you can't wait to, you write stuff on the list just so you can check it off. Maybe it's something that you already just did and you write it down. Oh yeah, I checked that off. I'll check that. And you live for this. And I love you and thank you for helping to get things done, because those of us who don't have it need you in our lives. Those who have it often see their T as a matter of simple discipline and work ethic. Like, why can't everybody just be like me? Why can't everybody just get it done? Why is everyone else so lazy? Those who don't have the genius of tenacity often feel guilty about it. Why am I so lazy? Why is it so hard for me to get everything done? Why can't I just... Both of these groups fail to recognize that the drive for completion, impact, and accomplishment is a natural and real gift. See, when we start recognizing the gifts and how people are wired, we can actually get the most out of each other and the most out of our relationships and the most out of the people we work with and the most out of our family in a way that fills them with joy and doesn't drain them. See, because every single one of us, you see there's the green and the yellow and the red. You guys have seen these symbols before. Green means go. Yellow means caution. And red means stop. Here's the truth, is we all have to do all of these. Even though one of those may be your red area and you don't like it, to some degree you're going to have to do that. But it's easier when you just have to buck up and know that I'm doing this. It's frustrating me to no end, but I'm going to get through this. Now, this is actually my profile that's up here. So in green, the things that fill me, if you see me doing something that involves wonder and invention, that's when I'm at my best, that's when I'm at my strongest, that's when I'm at my working genius. I love to wonder and invent, and one of the issues with me is that if you see the red area, that's actually your working frustrations. These are the things that's hard for you. It's hard for you. So one of my problems with tenacity is I have so many ideas. Do you know I can do one? I can invent an idea, and before I finish this idea, I've already got 3 more. And it's hard to get everything done, especially when I don't have this gift of tenacity. So God's telling me, you need some people in your life with this gift of tenacity who will help you get things done, who will come alongside you and remind you, no, let's stay on task. Let's do this thing first before we move on to the next thing. We need each other. But those yellow ones in the middle are actually, those are things that you're good at. Other people may say, you're great at that. But when you do it, it doesn't, you might be good at it. It's called a working competency. It just doesn't necessarily fill you. It doesn't stir you up. So this one is my profile. That's my boxes. It just so happens that it went in order, and yours may be on one end of the spectrum or the other end of the spectrum. But so if you'd like to take this test, so this test is actually, we're working through this as part of our equipping ministry. This is my cell phone number, and I'm going to walk you through how to take that test. And what I'd love to do is find out how you're wired. Because here's what I believe God wants us to do. God wants us to be able to plug you into being able to serve in a way that brings you joy. Wouldn't you love to be plugged in and be able to serve in a way that brings you joy based upon the way you're wired? I wouldn't want to pull somebody who, and I've been in these meetings, I used to have a creative team, and I would have these creative meetings, and I would have people that had this E and T, and they would come to the creative meetings because they loved me, they loved the ministry, but they would be in the creative meetings, and they'd be like, can we just get this over and do something? But for me, that was like my thing. It was my favorite thing to wonder and think, how do we make this better and come up with a so we need each other. And those areas of yellow is something that you're good at, but it doesn't bring you joy. It doesn't fill you. So here's the big thing. I want us to stop apologizing for the way God created us. When I talk about those areas of working frustration, stop apologizing for the way God created you. If you ask me to come and help, and you want it done a specific way, I'll come and help, and I'll probably change it at least a little. You might want to ask somebody who don't have my gifting if you want it done your way and only your way. I think about that. I used to work in a factory. Can you think of somebody whose gifting is wonder and invention working in a factory? They told me to stand in front of this machine and hit these 2 buttons from 5 to 5, 6 days a week, 5 to 5. So I was working half days. How do you guys think I did with that? So actually, I was their best employee. I was number 1 employee at the whole shop. Let me tell you why. I showed up, and the first day, I sat there and I hit those 2 buttons from 5 to 5. And I hit those 2 buttons from 5 to 5. And then I found out that I could bring my headphones. And the next day, 3 people didn't show up. And me and Stephen Curtis Chapman, we're hitting those two buttons and going over to this machine and hitting those two buttons and hitting this over to this machine. And me and Stephen Curtis Chapman were able to dance around the entire floor. And when these machines were done and I ran all the parts and I created a bottleneck here, I ran to the end and I was able to help with the people at the end of the line. And I just did that. I did this over and over and over again. And they're like, oh, wow, you can do more than just hit two buttons. Maybe we can actually increase production by not tying someone to one machine, but allowing them to, they were devastated when I quit. I don't know if they ever got anybody else who would do the work of four people. Sometimes it was third day, but music really helped. But that was the only way that job was going to not be draining for me. But we need to stop apologizing for the way God created you. God created you with strengths. Go to those strengths. But those working frustrations are real. You need to find out what they are, and you're going to find out why it is that this part of your job is draining you. And it's possible that you might be able to talk to your employer, you might be able to talk to your boss and say, can we possibly tweak this job, because there's this part of it that I don't love, but there's this part of it that I'm really good at, and I think we would get more done if I could do more of the thing that fills me up. The work. Then there's some things you can't get past. Like one of the things in my working frustrations of the enablement and tenacity is: has anyone ever tried to do a mortgage or do your taxes, or there's a certain way those things need to be done. Maybe you got overcharged on a phone bill and you've got to spend time on those things these are like fate's worse than death for me. But there are times when you got to buckle up and you got to do them. Can't get around them, especially when you've been the traveling, weary traveler for 5 months. You just got to buckle up and do them. But it doesn't mean that we have to do most of our stuff in the area that drains us. Stop apologizing for how God made you. And then I started with this question and I promised I would answer it. And this is where this lands, if God wanted us all to be one, why are we so different? If He wanted us all to be one, why are we so different? How do I know God wanted us to be one? Well, first of all, did you know Jesus was fully God and fully man? That if you looked at Jesus' profile on all this, I've read through the Gospels, and He is every single one of these. He is fully man. You can see wonder and invention. Has anyone ever created something out of nothing better than Jesus? And He spoke the world into existence. Come on. And invention. Let's make wine out of water. Yeah, He had it in spades. Discernment. The woman at the well comes to Him and she says, He says, yes, it's true that you don't have a husband, for you have had 5. Galvanizing. He took 12 men and were able to get the 12 men to change the world. Enablement. Did anybody serve greater than the Son of Man? Did anybody serve others? He came to serve. And tenacity. It is finished. Says it all, doesn't it? Jesus was fully man and green on every one of those. And this is what Jesus, his prayer that He was praying before He went to the cross in John chapter 17, He's praying to the Father and He says, I pray that they, and He's talking about you and me, He says, I pray that they will all be one just as you and I are one. As you are in me, Father, and I am in you, and they may be in us, so that the world will believe you sent me. Let's read those underlined words together. We will all be one, so that the world will believe that you sent me. Because here's the truth. Why are you like you are? each one of us, we have 2 areas of genius, 2 areas of working competence, and 2 areas of working frustrations. And the reason you're like you are is so you could be all I'm not. So that we could be all he prayed for. And here's what I know. Most of you are probably, if you're married, you're probably married to someone who has at least one of those working geniuses as your working frustration. God just has a sense of humor. But here's what we got to know is, let's read this out loud. Alone, I'm wired for failure. But together, we are wired for greatness. And we're going to spend the rest of this month, I'm going to have this message is going to be online, and I'm not going to go through this whole thing every week this month. But you need to have someone in your life go through, read the message, and text me, and let's get the assessment, and let's talk about how to get work done in a way that brings you joy. And that can be your personal job, it can be volunteering here at church, it can be in your relationships with family. I believe we're all wired for greatness. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, we come before you in the name of Jesus, God, and I just ask that you would complete that prayer here at Calvary, Lord. I don't know how to control the church as a whole, and I can't even control anything here at Calvary, God, but what I do believe is that if we would with faithful hearts pray that, God, you would make us one. That you love the way that you created each and every one of us, and you have put specific people here to accomplish the purposes that you have for Calvary Church. So I pray that we would be one so that the world would know that we are your disciples. In your name, Jesus, we pray. Amen.